scheme since 2022. So what is going on? Are governors on trial? Are governors under siege? And how can they ensure that there is harmony? Because at the end of the day, service delivery is affected. So we'd love to hear from you concerning this particular, side of conversation this morning. Reach us out across our social media platforms on Facebook, on EBN TV. Our SMS line is open 23059. You're in safe pair of hands this morning. My name is Cynthia Nanjala. I'd love us to first kick off with what is making headlines across the country. Now, the Council of Governors has opposed the e-procurement platform introduced by the National Treasury for use in government institutions. The Council of Governors chairperson and Wajir Governor Ahmed Abdullahi said counties will not adopt the platform until its functionality and efficiency are fully guaranteed. He noted that the platform in its current state poses operational challenges that could disrupt service delivery. The COG further accused the national government of violating the constitution by infringing on the autonomy of county governments. The council argued that the counties have the constitutional right to manage their own procurement processes without undue interference.
Article 6(2) of our constitution is not inferior to circulars issued by the National Treasury Minister. So he can't threaten us. If he's above the law, we'll know. He cannot threaten us that he's going to withhold money because you've told him the system that he has procured. I don't know where from.
And how much?
And how much. And whether it was still procured through process. Is not working. If it's not working, it's not working. And no one can shove it down our throats. You must address the issues we're raising. And you must respect that we're two levels of government. And we're both a creation.
Now, we had an in-depth conversation around this yesterday during the broadcast in the morning concerning the e-procurement, to which governors have, expressed their distaste of it, saying, it does not give them autonomy in terms of procurement processes as they were granted by the Constitution. Now, President William Ruto and the CS for National Treasury, John Mbadi, at a church meeting on Sunday, really insisted that this is the way to go, asking all government agencies to go the e-procurement way. But it's a question on the legality of it, the operations, how will it be controlled, what's the ownership of it, what's the data privacy, and so many questions around this. And I remember one of the guests we had yesterday mentioned that it can have a public participation or not, but essentially anything that touches on the public, especially public funds, public resources, needs to undergo, public participation. So we'll be keeping tabs with that just to see how that particular story goes. But on the same point, the Kenya County Government Workers Union has expressed full support for President William Ruto's directive on the e-procurement, urging governors to adapt the system swiftly to curb wastage of public funds and corruption. Speaking at a press briefing, the Union Secretary General Robert Duba, flanked by National Vice Chairman John Ndunda and National Treasury Tom Kanyede, emphasized that the e-procurement is highly efficient and essential for promoting transparency in county operations. The union also called for speedy and harmonized talks regarding the employment of doctors under the Universal Health Coverage Program. Duba stressed that it is the right of doctors to be employed and urged the Council of Governors to coordinate with the national government on funding mechanisms, suggesting options such as the upcoming supplementary budget.
We believe anything that will help the counties should be embraced, because we can see that they are saying it is a little bit hasty, mad, and we know what is also paining the national government, because the level of corruption everywhere, both national and down there, it's really disturbing. And we can understand why the president says we must do this, because it is believed, and we also believe it will help. It is a help both to the national government, county government, and to the citizen generally, because anything that can reduce corruption or bad behavior in the course of procurement will be useful to all of us. So we want to urge the Council of Governors to move, adopt it. We believe they are not saying it's not good. They are only saying that it's a little bit hasty, and this can be agreed and implemented. I think the government's concern is in good faith, and we support it, and we require the Council of Governors also to move in, to accept, because it will improve, it will help all of us. And I remember Council of Governors in the devolution conference talked a lot about the savage business of corruption in this country. It is terrible. And even if anything that will help them also to reduce this. You know?
SRC walitoa mwelekeo na mwongozo kuhusu nyongeza hii ya mishahara mwaka jana, na hii ikatimizwa katika national government. Wafanyikazi waliongezewa na wale wa counties hawajaongezewa mpaka waleo. Na tunashangaa sisi kama chama ni kwa nini linatokezea saa hizi baada ya mwaka moja na kitu kupita. Ili hali hao magavana wote wamekuwa tu nchini Kenya, wamekuwa humuhumu na wamenyamaza, na sasa hivi ndio wanadai hizi hela. Kuna kaunti mingi Kenya, mshahara wa mwezi wa 6, wa 7 na 8, na sasa tumeanza mwezi wa 9. Wafanyikazi hawajapata pesa. Na hawakuongea leo waseme ni pesa hawajapewa na serikali kuu ama wamepewa na zikaenda wapi. Wafanyikazi wamefungiwa manyumba, wafanyikazi watoto wao hawajaweza kwenda shule, wafanyikazi katika counties wanakaa na wasiwasi kwa sababu loans zao na makato yao hajapelekwa mahali kule ambao inafaa.
Former Bungoma County Governor Wycliffe Wangamati will spent the night in police custody ahead of his arraignment today, Tuesday. Wangamati surrendered to the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission (EACC) following summons after the Director of Public Prosecutions or DPP approved graft charges against him and 17 others. According to the DPP, the charges stem from the alleged embezzlement of 70 million shillings in public funds through private companies linked to the suspects. Despite attempts to block his arraignment, Wangamati remained in custody as investigations continue. Meanwhile, Bomet Governor Hilary Bachok, who was also summoned in a separate matter, failed to secure court orders to stop his prosecution. Tension continues to grip Tipi's area along the Nakuru-Narok border following renewed clashes between two rival communities. According to residents, several houses were torched overnight despite heightened security patrols in the region, with officers maintaining day and night surveillance. Elders from the warring communities have reportedly held a closed-door meeting in an effort to find a lasting solution to the unrest. Meanwhile, the dusk to dawn curfew imposed in Tipi's end at the end of the tarmac stretch remains in force for the second week as authorities seek to restore calm.
Kati kulipopambasuka nikaambia alipelekwa kule Egerton, nikaenda huko nikamkuta vile alipopigwa risasi, ubongo ikimwagika huku nyuma. Tukaenda nikaandikiwa barua, nikaambiwa siku ya kesho niamkie niende kwa police station Mao.
Lakini sisi hapa tunaomba amani ipatikane. Sasa hii watu wengi wanaangamika sana, hawana chakula, hawana makao. Sasa tunaomba amani.
Tukubaliane saa moja kila mtu aende nyumbani. Kutangali tunafungia pikipiki hizo endeni, lakini hii kuzurura hapa.
Education officials in Narok have shut down the SDA primary and secondary school following the mysterious death of a male student. The boy's body was discovered under unclear circumstances with blood stains reported in several areas of the school, particularly in the boys' washrooms where he was found lifeless. Speaking at the institution, Narok County Director of Education Apollo Apuko urged parents to remain calm and allow the government to conduct thorough investigations into the incident. The body of the deceased was moved to the Narok Level 5 Referral Hospital mortuary as investigations continue.
Leo asubuhi napata mtoto kuuliwa ndani ya choo. Na chini kaa kuku. Nikuuliza dana usiku kuamkia leo. Kukudije, hii shule ni bondi mani ya Tondo, dom ni nakaaje?
Hapa ni jirani yangu hii shule. Na tumeshangaa usiku mzima kuna kitu tumesikia wala ndulu ama nini. Tumepatwa na hofu, tumepigwa na butua ya kwamba mtoto anaweza chinjwa kama mnyama. Tuko na hofu kama wazazi. Na tunaongelesha nchi nzima, tuko tayari naro kukushikana, tuwe sisi wenyewe ndio tutakuwa tunalinda. Lakini tuko na swali ambaye inatukita mizizi ya kwamba hatukuelewa na hatukuitwa, mtoto anachinjwa, anakufa, anaaga. Kwa hivyo tunaomba serikali yetu ambaye iko kwa kiti iweze kutusaidia, tushikane pamoja, tuweze kujua mwenye kutenda hiki kitendo. Matron mwenye analala na watoto, mtoto mmoja anawezaje akatolewa? Tuko na hofu na tuko na maswali ambaye ieleweki, lakini itaeleweka.
Tunaomba ya kwamba serikali yetu washukue hatua ya uchunguzi ya ndani mpaka tujue jinsi vile hii mambo imefanyika.
According to what we've gathered, ni kwamba the young boy had been killed, had actually been found murdered katika kitanda, and from what we also gathered ni kwamba the incident might have happened at night, maybe towards the morning hours. And it's so unfortunate because it is such a rare incident that has never happened in this county and also in this town. As we are talking right now, the body has been taken to mortuary for the young man. Together with us, we've got some other leaders who are here. We have the Director of Education who is here. And what again, we found out that this school has not been registered as a boarding school. It is actually registered as a day school. So, number one, that's one big mistake. We've been told all have been arrested, plus including the head teacher. And we have decided from now going forward, this school has been officially closed.
Any boarding section is an illegal entity, and we've seen a lot of blood. And the boy is in the mortuary as we are speaking now. So we are closing this school today, and on Monday we don't expect any student to be here, and we'll leave that to the DCI to investigate.
A senior police officer overseeing the Central Police Station, Amari, has rejected allegations of a cover-up in the firearms register during the ongoing Rex Masai murder inquest. Frederick Okapesi testified that while the register contains errors, the inconsistencies were not intended to conceal the truth. He explained that the documents are manually generated, making them prone to mistakes. Okapesi added that when genuine error occurs, officers are permitted to use correction methods such as striking thorough entries or applying a black wash. Also testifying in court, a government chemist analyst confirmed that the DNA profile obtained from samples collected at the shooting scene matched that of Rex Masai. The inquest is set to resume on 15th of September 2025 with 6 additional witnesses scheduled to testify.
I have used the whiteout for the purpose of correction. For correction. For the correction. And that is any other thing. Okay. Because maybe somebody might say, no, why only this date? So I've used it. So, Your Honor. So what I'm saying, Your Honor, let us be logical. Yes. These are manually generated documents by my own handwriting. Very well. Which are subject to mistakes. I remember the time President Uhuru Kenyatta, when he was the Minister of Finance, there was computer error. Yes.
Now, the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions, ODPP, has indicated its intention to withdraw corruption charges against former Migori County Governor Okoth Obado. The move comes as the ODPP, in collaboration with the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission, EACC, requested a 1-month adjournment to allow ongoing negotiations aimed at reaching an out-of-court settlement through plea bargains to conclude. The court was informed that both parties are engaged in advanced discussions and require additional time to finalize the agreements. Obado, 4 of his children, and several co-accused are implicated in a corruption case involving 505 million Kenyan shillings. However, the EACC has clarified that it has not signed any plea bargain agreement, signaling that the talks are still in progress and no formal settlement has been reached. Now, leaders of the Gikuyu, Embu and Meru Association, GEMA, have declared their unwavering support for President William Ruto ahead of the 2027 polls, ruling out any alliance with the opposition camp led by former Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua. Speaking at a GEMA forum in Mombasa, the leaders resolved to actively spearhead Ruto's re-election campaign across the country.
Mnaona kiongozi anatoka Kenya, anaenda Amerika, anaongea na wenzao. Na mimi nimeamua kuzunguka Kenya mzima nikiunganisha Wameru. Hebu nipigeni makofi. Ya kwamba nilisema sina mtoto wa mgongo wala wa tumbo. Sina mtoto aliye na mate wala makamazi. Wote nitasema nitaunganisha. Na vita yenu ndio vita yangu nikiwa kiongozi wa Wameru. Na sisi Wameru tuko kwa serikali. Mwaka 1960s waliongoza nchi hii alikuwa ni Mkikuyu. Hatikuambiwa tutoke kwa serikali. Ikachukuliwa na Kibaki miaka 10. Meru akuambiwa atoke kwa serikali. Ikachukuliwa na Uhuru Kenyatta miaka 10. Meru akuambiwa atoke kwa serikali. Ikachukuliwa na Gachagua miaka 2. Meru akuambiwa atoke kwa serikali. Wakati ule imechukuliwa na mtoto wetu Kithure Kindiki, ndio sisi tuambiwa kwamba tutoke kwa serikali. Mtakubali? 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 Sisi hatuwezi kubali kutoka kwa serikali ya William Samoei Ruto tukiwa Wameru. Tunasema kwamba tumeungana kitu kimoja, ya kwamba hakuna mseso yoyote. Tunajua kwamba William Ruto akipata kiti 2027 na Kithure Kindiki akiwa naibu wake 2032 atakuwa rais wa nchi Profesa Kithure Kindiki. Na kwa Kimeru inasema kwamba kirikemushie gitiaga tatia ngware gante kwaria ningere ni mpeni mbiko moleo ya kwamba siasa ya ukabila tutaki, siasa ya Mount Kenya tutaki, siasa ya Dhuria tutaki, siasa ya Ngage tutaki, siasa ya Nyambene tutaki. Sisi tunataka siasa ambaye hauna ukabila wowote. Mombasa si wa Meru, Mombasa si wa Kisii, Mombasa si ya Njaluo wala wa Kikuyu. Mombasa ni ya Wakenya, Meru ni ya Wakenya, Kikuyu ni kwa Wakenya, Kisumu ni ya Wakenya, Malindi ni ya Wakenya. Na ndipo nasema kwamba huyu ni mtoto wetu, huyu ni mtoto wetu Kitonga. Na Kitonga ni Mwenyezi Mungu ametunukia nyinyi baraka aweza kuinua nyinyi Wameru.
All right, let's take a look at the newspapers this morning and what is making headlines. So I'll kick it off with the Daily Nation that speaks of Raila fights to rescue Sakaja. Raila fights to rescue Sakaja. The former premier unable to broker a truce after 2 meetings following a deadlock. Now signaling collaboration in the broad-based government, ODM leader Raila Odinga has gone into overdrive to scuttle a plot by Nairobi County Assembly members to impeach Governor Johnson Sakaja, who was elected on a United Democratic Alliance ticket. Now, it's a game of numbers here. Impeachment is all about numbers, where the Nairobi County Assembly has a total of 123 members of the County Assembly after the death of Kariobangi North's Joel Munuve in April. So they're set to be 24, but they're 123. Now, the number required is 1/3 of the House to introduce the impeachment motion, which is at 41. 87 MCAs have signed the draft motion to impeach the governor. 82, that's the 2/3 majority, is needed to send Sakaja to trial by the Senate. So you need to understand the process here. Essentially, MPs need to introduce, MCAs, not MPs, MCAs need to introduce this impeachment motion to the floor of the Nairobi County Assembly. At least 1/3 of those members of the Assembly need to support this impeachment motion. They can now vote on it to send this impeachment motion through a communique from the Speaker of the Nairobi County Assembly to the Speaker of the Senate, and that number is at 2/3 of the members of the County Assembly, which is at 82, that is required to send the governor's impeachment motion to the floor of the Senate. Now, we are not at the Senate just yet. It's all about mobilization within the County Assembly to get the numbers required, as well as some of those accusations that have been labeled up to sort of also be voted upon. And in case you're wondering, what is he being accused of? Now, he's accused of presiding over a collapsing county government. He's accused of undermining public health through privatization of key functions of the county government. He's accused of the poor state of public hospitals. He's accused of failures in service delivery. He's accused of questionable management practices. And these are some of the accusations that have been labeled against the governor. Now, to link it to the headline on top of the Daily Nation this morning is that, Nairobi County Governor Johnson Sakaja, it's sort of like the favored child, for lack of a better word. He has got the backing of President William Ruto. He has got the backing of the ODM leader Raila Odinga. Now, the MCAs are fighting to impeach him, but at the same time, Odinga is fighting to save him and to keep him in office. Now, remember, it is expected that he will get that ticket, of running for Nairobi County Governor come 2027, and will have the backing of the ODM leader Raila Odinga. Which party? Well, it's a bit too early to say. Could be the UDA party, could be the ODM party. But what we can say is that, it is perceived that he could get the backing of the two heads of state. And so he'll be relying heavily on these two men to try and save his political career if the MCAs make good their threat to actually send this impeachment through, and for him to go to the Senate. But I'd love us to have a conversation more about that when our guest gets in studio, on just that the governor's on trial, because within this particular 13th parliament, we've seen one governor impeached, one survives impeachment, actually two have survived impeachment, as well as one deputy governor impeached. So that is a conversation we need to have on just around the MCAs. They've been granted that mandate by the Constitution, but where is the line drawn, especially when it gets to the Senate and it is proven that some of these grounds are not backed by evidence. And so we've wasted a whole process really to ensure that a governor exits from office. So we'll be having much more depth conversation around that. Now also, schools send students home as the state delays wiring funds. That's still on the Daily Nation. Capitation problems across the country, where we are having deficits that have not been wired to the county, to the schools, that is. And so the thing is, you're likely to see your child being sent home this week or next week, from school following capitation problems. Now, just to paint a picture of what the problem really is, for instance, we're now in term 3, right? But in term 1, just 50% of the money has been disbursed. So a total of about 7.5 billion shillings has not been sent to schools. In term 2, the term that just ended, just 30% has been disbursed. A total of 10.5 billion shillings has not been disbursed to schools. Now, if you do the math within the two terms, term 1 and term 2, schools are set to receive 17 billion shillings, which has not been disbursed by the national government. Now, term 3, where we are at as we speak, we're looking at a total of undisbursed fee of 14.5 billion shillings. Now, for the whole year, at this particular date, 32.6 billion shillings has not been disbursed to schools. And so that is where the biggest problem comes with capitation, right? Because there's a certain amount of money that is being paid by the government, and there's a certain amount of money that is being paid by the parent. And so what schools are finding themselves in is a position where they're not allowed to add school fees, but at the same time the government is not sending money on time. And so it's a catch-22 situation. Basically, these schools need to be developed. These kids need to eat in school. You've got teachers who, rely heavily on learning materials that need to be purchased. You've got basic, things that need to be purchased in schools but cannot be purchased. You've got services to pay in schools. You've got contractors that schools need to pay. And so that is where the schools find themselves in, and that is why there's always a big temptation by schools to raise money in a different way. They'll introduce various, bulk of money from parents to raise that particular amount of money. So according to Kupet Deputy Secretary General, he says last term schools closed early due to financial constraints. If this continues, principals may have no choice but to shut down again. And as well, top of the page, governors defy Ruto on public system tenders. This concerns the e-procurement system, which has largely been the center of discussion for the better part of Monday, and I believe today as well, as governors hold a press conference, say e-procurement is not the way to go for county governments. They are granted autonomy by this constitution, and that should remain that way. Now, I'd love us to go to the Standard newspaper, which speaks of big economy lie. That is the headline on the Standard this morning, the big economy lie. Where is the cash? Now, when Treasury paints a rosy picture with its upbeat forecasts, the truth is that Kenyans are still staring at empty wallets, stalled dreams, and shrinking dignity. Numbers don't lie, but they can mislead. Unless growth translates into jobs, into incomes, and into real wealth, we are simply being sold GDP without a meal on the table, the gross domestic product. Now, the CS for National Treasury, John Mbadi, ought to put people before statistics and reimagine the economy, not as an elite casino, but as values-driven project of shared prosperity. That is the headline on the Standard this morning, and this concerns the economy, the big economy lie. That's what the headline paints it as. Now, we all know that CS John Mbadi is an expert, in quotes, of the government after the broad-based coalition got into place, or the broad-based government got into place. And he's been able to really speak a lot about how the economy is doing well, and says inflation has reduced since he got into office, has been able to back some of these numbers with what he says is, cheaper cost of goods, cheaper cost of doing business in the country. Now, as of October 2024, which was last year, the inflation rate was at 2.7%. In August, the inflation rate is at 4.5%. Now, Mbadi says Kenya economy is on the rise, but Kenyans are getting hungrier. And perhaps we'd love to hear from you on where you sit as a common mwananchi. Do you get the sense that life is much more expensive right now compared to last year? Or at least if you look at the period that the CS has been in office, has there been that big impact that you have felt, whether it's the cost of buying petrol or fuel or kerosene, whether it's the cost of doing business in the country? If you own a company, are you paying cheaper? Are you paying less? Are more customers walking into your shop? Are less customers walking into your shop? In terms as well as of access to just money on hands, is money very easily accessible? I remember one time we were having a comparison between Kenya and Uganda, and that in Uganda there's much more free cash flow. That means residents of Uganda have actual access to money in their hands easily, compared to Kenyans who are likely not to have that much cash on hand at a particular point. So there's so much aspect to an economy, as well as job creation. Are we having more people who have been adapted into jobs, have been onboarded into companies? Are you having the least amount of salary being paid to Kenyans increasing, or is it at the same point? Is it reducing? So there are very different aspects to just gauge on how the economy is doing. And even as much as Mbadi says the economy is on the rise, really, if you do the research and get down to numbers, it could tell a different story. So where's the cash? That's the big question. As well as, I can link into that story on capitation in schools. I mean, the economy is doing wonderfully, right? But are schools getting their money? Are we having contractors being paid on time? Because they contribute to various aspects of the society. Are we having roads being built? Are we having hospitals being constructed? Are we having medicine in hospitals? Because after all, the economy is doing wonderfully, right? So when Treasury paints a rosy picture with its upbeat focus, the truth is that Kenyans are still staring at empty wallets, at stalled dreams, and shrinking dignity. Numbers don't lie, but they can mislead. So that's the headline this morning on top of the Standard newspaper. Now, putting up a show, Duale DCI smile for cameras in graft war. Health Cabinet Secretary Aden Duale tried to wash his hands off the Social Health Authority SHA scandal, theatrically dumping files on the DCI before the press, but refused to take questions because of the now tired and age-old excuse that answers might jeopardize investigations. Now, himself and the SHA CEO, Massimo Wangangi, presented a list of what they say is fake hospitals who have tried to rig the process of money disbursements to hospitals, to the DCI, and they did this yesterday. The glare of cameras, we don't know what these hospitals are, and just how much money is in question. How much money are we talking about that has or could have possibly been embezzled or could have been lost at the hands of somebody who's not a hospital, does not own a hospital? And so is the big question Standard are asking, is this a cabinet secretary or a sleuth? Well, Duale hands SHA fraud files to DCI amid uproar, and so much more details needs to be unearthed concerning that, or at least revealed, so that Kenyans can get a clear picture of how much money we are actually talking about that has been lost, and what will they do to get this money back. So that is the headline on top of the Standard, as well as it is a tough time being a parent or a school head when education is reduced to political pledges, parents to cash machines, and learners to collateral. The dream of free school turns into an illusion and a burden for caregivers. Same story on capitation. It's a new term, but there's no money in school. Your child is likely to be sent home. You probably also having a cash crunch at the moment, so the learner stays home, is not able to access education, and becomes a cycle that is very dangerous, especially for a human capital that needs to be invested upon. So it's a big cry from school heads, it's a big cry from education stakeholders to just ensure that they can get money to schools as fast as they can. Finally, the Star newspaper, state farms bleed public coffers dry. Now, state farms bleed public coffers dry. Most of the state farms are insolvent after piling up massive losses. Parastatals in the red, which have got deficits, include the national broadcaster KBC at 89 billion shillings, Ketraco 16 billion shillings, you've got Postbank at 14 billion shillings, Sony Sugar 4.9 billion, as well as the new KCC at 1.6 billion shillings. So that is a story that is on the stamp of parastatals that are bleeding the coffers dry. Now, a report by the Auditor General has exposed the alarming financial state of dozens of state corporations, especially those in energy, agriculture, and industrial sectors. The review reveals entities that are technically bankrupt and surviving on solely government bailouts and taxpayer-funded debt, casting severe doubt on their ability to continue operations. Now, the AG says a review of the year ending June 30th, 2024 established a worrying pattern of insolvency and massive accumulated losses. And so that is an interesting aspect of just some of these parastatals. There was a time the head of state pushed to merge some of the parastatals, which they did after a cabinet, agreement, but some of obviously were not merged. But if you look at some of these numbers, huge billions of shillings of losses that are being counted at KBC 89 billion, Ketraco 16 billion, Postbank 14 billion shillings. Postal Corporation, 7.7 billion shillings. Rivertex, 3.4 billion. Muhoroni Sugar, 3 billion. Zoya Sugar, 3 billion. Kenya Petroleum Refineries, 2.4 billion. New KCC, 1.6 billion. So out of these companies, at least on top of the page, 3 of them are sugar companies. Big question, how do we bail out sugar companies? And that perhaps explains the PPP move, the public-private partnership agreements that the head of state was pushing for sugar companies. And so it's a systemic failed relief. The government is not able to solve these issues on time. So that is the headline on top of the Star newspaper. So those are the key headlines this morning, but don't go too far. We'll be coming back shortly on a much more in-depth conversation around matters to do with governance, especially within the county governments. We have got 47 county governments in Kenya. How can they ensure effective service delivery? Because remember, before you go to the national government or before you even get to your governor, your MCA should be your first contact point. Are you feeling that particular role being duly fulfilled, or that they focus on matters politics? So we'll be back shortly with that conversation. Don't go too far.